Hi everyone, welcome back to the week 7 of the CBT class. Lately, you've been learning some skills that you can use to first identify automatic thoughts and secondly, to evaluate and modify negative and unhelpful automatic thoughts. Today, you'll be learning some skills that you can use to identify beliefs, which include both intermediate and core beliefs, and some skills that you can use to modify those beliefs. So we're going to begin by reviewing some of the topics that we covered about core beliefs. So let's begin. So what are core beliefs? Some people use the term schemas, so those terms can be used interchangeably. So core beliefs is a mental structure. It's a hypothesized mental structure that helps people organize incoming information. We call it hypothesized because no one's ever seen this mental structure. It's something that we imagine that exists. And it's a kind of beliefs that contain fundamental rules for information processing. So there's a vast amount of information that's out there. And when your brain process those information, depending on this mental structure, it's going to follow certain rules. So core beliefs provide templates for screening and filtering information so that not all information are processed and screened in the same way. Um, and that template, it also helps you to make decisions and it drives those characteristic patterns of your behavior. For example, if a person's schemas are heavily shadowed by certain negative themes, such as loss, rejection, and failure and hopelessness, that person's brain, when they go through the cognitive processing, they're gonna filter out information through that lens of loss, rejection, and failure and hopelessness. And that cognitive processing is going to be oriented toward processing schema congruent data, which means that this person is going to look for themes that conform those themes that are loss oriented, rejection oriented, and failure and hopelessness oriented data. And that's how a person's core beliefs are solidified with time. So it's like when you wear sunglasses. If you're wearing gray sunglasses, everything looks gray. If you're wearing pink sunglasses, everything looks pink. So we talked about several cognitive distortions last week. So if you're wearing shoot must odd sunglasses, then that's how your brain is going to process information. Same as if you're wearing black white glasses, that's how your brain is going to see when they process information. Jumping to conclusion, blaming yourself glasses. So, those cognitive distortions, almost like you're wearing those sunglasses so that, you only filter out those information that are congruent the schema that you have. Core beliefs are shaped by interactions with parents, teachers, and peers, and other significant people in a person's life, usually during the early childhood period. And then core beliefs are also shaped by life events, particularly traumatic events, certain successes, and other formative influences. There's also influence from genetics. People's temperament, level of intellect, special skills or lack of skills, or biological vulnerability to mental or physical illness. All these things actually do influence why certain people develop certain kind of core beliefs when they are raised in similar kind of environment. So how is this information relevant to your client's functioning? So if you remember, you learned the cognitive model, there's a triggering event, and then there is all kinds of chain reactions that's coming from this cognitive processing of that triggering event. So cognitive restructuring is a structured and collaborative approach where therapists are helping clients to identify those schemas that filter information according to certain rules that they have developed, and evaluate those core beliefs and help clients to modify those unhelpful thoughts, unhelpful beliefs that contribute to their psychological disturbance. So basically, cognitive restructuring is helping clients to stop that automatic information processing based on their negative existing schema. One thing that's really important for you to remember when you engage your clients in the process of cognitive restructuring is that the goal of CBT is symptom reduction. It's not personality change. So your clients might have personality that's completely different from your own, but you're not going to try to change your clients who they are. You're going to work closely with your clients to identify those kind of thoughts that are directly contributing to their clinical symptom, and then manipulate those thoughts so that your clients can feel better and then continue on with their lives. So this is very, very important for you to remember. So before you start that cognitive restructuring, you will have to decide whether to address a certain beliefs or not. And here are some of the things that you want to consider in making that decision. First of all, like you have to identify that beliefs, what they are. And then you will have to judge how strongly your client believes in it. And if your clients really strongly believe in it, how broadly and how strongly does a thought or beliefs affect your client's lives. And if you decide that that thought really broadly and strongly influence your client's life, should I work on it now? Is now a good timing to work on it? Is it likely your clients will be able to evaluate it with sufficient objectivity at this point? Your clients might not be really completely ready to face those core beliefs. And then there's all kinds of situations like circumstantial kind of factors that you would pay attention to in considering that question. And also, do you have enough time in the session today to begin working on it? Like obviously, you don't want to touch on core beliefs like toward the end of session. You want to make sure that there's enough time in your session to address the things that will come up once you start asking about those core beliefs. Here's the process of cognitive restructuring. Like I said, first you want to identify those beliefs and decide whether to work on that beliefs or not. And once you decide to work on modifying certain beliefs, you want to educate clients about core beliefs and then draw a connection between their current functioning and their core beliefs. So some of the introductory slides that I use to explain what core beliefs are and how that's connected with the client's functioning. You can use those things to teach your clients about core beliefs. And after that, you want to change rules and attitudes into assumptions. So this is, you might remember we talked about intermediate beliefs, and some clients' thoughts can be articulated in the form of attitudes and rules and assumptions. So rules, a lot of your clients would actually say, oh, I should, I must, or she must, or he must. So when you hear those sentences, you know that clients have like strong thoughts and beliefs about certain those topics, right? And it's always easier to help your client to translate those rules statements to assumption statements. So if you think back to the first video that you watched about Dr. Kudisky working with this counselor, and then she had this beliefs that powerful women work. So if you write it in a like should statement, she's actually saying that women should work to be powerful. Is that right? So if you translate it into assumption, if I work, that means I am powerful. If I don't work, that means I am powerless. So what does it mean? If you're powerless, what does that mean? So, by asking these questions, you help your clients to really get to the bottom of the client's like core thinking about themselves or about other people or about the world itself. So once you identify core beliefs, you try to change that to some kind of assumptions. And then it's easier for you to identify really the core beliefs. So after you identify those core beliefs and translate it into the assumptions, you want to examine the advantages and disadvantages of thinking that way. So by like continuously thinking that I am powerless if I don't work, what would be the advantages of believing that? And what would be disadvantages of believing that? And then if you decide that there's more disadvantages than advantages of having that belief, then you work with your clients to formulate a new belief. So that was kind of overarching process of cognitive restructure. So for you to engage your clients in cognitive restructuring, you first have to identify those beliefs, right? So there are certain techniques that you can use to identify core beliefs, which includes guided discovery or Socratic questioning, which you learned already when we talk about identifying automatic thoughts, or linking automatic thoughts with schemas, life history review, schema inventory, downward arrow technique. So it's important that you should be able to differentiate techniques that are used to identify schemas versus techniques that are used to modify schemas. And then I will go through each of these techniques in more detail. So first, let's look at linking automatic thoughts with the schema. So if you remember the CCD that you learned how to establish after you do CBT assessment, we actually had three different triggering situations, and for each of those triggering situations, we practiced how to identify thoughts and behaviors, those reactions, and automatic thoughts that are tied with those reactions. And then, there was a box like meaning of automatic thoughts. And then I mentioned that if you closely look at those meaning of automatic thoughts, you will recognize some theme. So, a lot of times when you look at across different situations, if you see some repetitive themes, see if you can connect to like those three major categories of core beliefs: helpless, unlovable, and worthless themes. Or because you're gonna have your clients to practice using thought records throughout the week, and then you can give out like homework, recording thoughts like throughout the week. So you can review those thought records with your client and see if there is any theme that you can discover. And review a written list of automatic thoughts. So like if you remember the automatic thoughts checklist that I mentioned before, it's a list of compiled like thoughts that people with depression tend to get into quite frequently. And then if you have your clients check some of the automatic thoughts that are kind of associated, some of the thoughts that are listed in that automatic thought checklist, that could be another way for you to identify some themes across these different automatic thoughts. Another strategy that you can use to identify beliefs, it's life history review. You could do global review, kind of looking back at the entire life that your clients lived, and then kind of identifying some major events that happened in your clients' lives. You can also do a targeted review, maybe pick one or few incidents that your clients think that have influenced your clients' thinking significantly, such as traumatic experience or troubled relationships, um, perceived physical personality defects, whichever your clients perceive as significantly influence the clients think about themselves or other people or future. You can ask about people who are influential for your clients. Ask about interests, jobs, spiritual practices, sports, and other activities that are important to your client. Ask about cultural and social influences, education, readings, and self-study, and possibility of transforming experience. Those who took human behavior class might have learned about transpersonal theories, and some people have this profound like peak experience where they feel complete like transformation of like who they are because of these kind of mystic experience. So those will be important to kind of explore. So basically, by asking all these questions about like significant people and life events that your clients experienced, you want to kind of get a sense of how these experiences that are very important to your clients might have shaped some kind of core beliefs that are currently impacting your client's current functioning. Another strategies that you can use to identify schema or core beliefs is to use existing list of healthy schemas and maladaptive schemas for those clients who have hard time maybe articulating their core beliefs or would be um, helped by seeing some examples of core beliefs. You can use this list. I uploaded this file to Canvas so that you can download it and use it in your session. Downward arrow technique is a clinical skills that's used by therapists to ask repeatedly about meaning of situational automatic thoughts or intermediate beliefs until they arrive upon a core belief of which meaning is so fundamental that there's no additional meaning associated with it. So for example, the belief that in the first video that you watched, the client had this belief, powerful women work, right? So that's a kind of general statement, and then it's an attitude, powerful women work. So if you translate it to roles, it would look like I should work to be powerful. And then if you also translate it to assumption, if then statement, then if I work, that means I'm powerful. If I don't work, that means I'm not powerful or powerless. And then you ask, so let's say that you were not powerful. If that's true, what would be so bad about that? So if you're not powerful, what would that mean to you? So I find it interesting that she is attributing really deep like meaning to like being powerful, and then I'm curious like where she got that idea. Why is being powerful so important to her? So she may answer, so if I'm not powerful, that means I'm useless. If I'm not powerful, that means I'm helpless. So that could actually lead to discovering, more fundamental core beliefs about clients themselves. You will actually watch a therapist using downward arrow technique in our Zoom live session and have a chance to practice this skill. So far we talked about skills that you can use to identify core beliefs And what about intermediate beliefs? I mentioned that intermediate beliefs are often expressed in a form of attitudes, rules, and assumptions. So rules are anything that you can write in a should, must statement. I shouldn't trust other people. I should be perfect. So that's a rule. And attitude is more like generalized statement. You know, the person who has a rule that I shouldn't trust other people might have this generalized kind of attitude that it's bad to trust people, or people are not trustworthy. And I also mentioned that it's always helpful to translate these rules and attitudes into assumptions, right? So if I don't trust people, then I'm going to be okay. If I trust other people, something bad will happen. If I avoid people, if I don't really let them know who I am, then I'll be okay. So all these assumptions. So because intermediate beliefs are often expressed in the form of attitudes and rules and assumptions, look for those clues when your clients talk about themselves or other people or future and the world in general. Another way to identify intermediate beliefs that you can kind of start out with an kind of partial sentence. So do you think you can build this in, you know, if I try something that could be hard for me, then what do you think will happen? So let's say that there is a client who thinks that, you know, the client is completely incapable, and then there's no reason why they should try hard to accomplish anything. In this case, if you provide a partial kind of sentence by starting out that if I try something that could be hard for me, then I will fail. And if I fail, that means I'm incapable, which proves your client's core belief. So that's another way that you can identify intermediate beliefs. Another way to identify intermediate beliefs is to just hypothesize. You know, after talking to your client for some time, you kind of have a hunch that your clients might have these kind of beliefs. So it's okay to just say that it seems to me that you have some idea about opening yourself up to criticism from other people. Do you think that that could be true? Do you think that could have something to do with the reason why you avoid social situations? What do you think? So, I mean, it's completely fine that you share your hypothesis, and then, you know, your clients might say no, and it's okay to just move on. But it's perfectly fine way of identifying intermediate beliefs. So, along with the intermediate beliefs, will be a lot of times will be translated into compensatory behaviors because your clients have those roles that I should, I must, I should not. So that would be actually shown as like observable behaviors. So how do you identify compensatory behaviors? First of all, you just ask, how has the client coped with core beliefs? I mentioned that compensatory behaviors is your client developed those compensatory behaviors because, you know, that core beliefs that your clients have, it's very painful to acknowledge it, to admit that. So, you know, clients try to avoid any kind of situation that will actually prove their core beliefs are true. So what are some of the coping strategies that your clients have used? What kind of behavioral strategies has your client developed to get along in life? And what are some consistent patterns of your client's behavior that are dysfunctional? So asking these questions will help you identify your client's compensatory behaviors. So once you identify schemas or core beliefs, if you decide that these are the core beliefs that are negatively contributing to your client's condition, then you want to use some skills to modify those thoughts to more helpful and adaptive thoughts. So some of the skills that you can use include a lot of skills that you learned to use to identify automatic thoughts. So there will be a lot of overlap. So first of all, Socratic questioning, it's kind of generic kind of skills that you can use throughout the entire CBT session. And as part of the 7-column technique, you learned how to examine the evidence that supports or evidence that are against your client's beliefs, and listing advantages and disadvantages of having that beliefs. And based on that, generate some alternative thoughts that are more helpful and adaptive. There is a systematic way that you can do examining the evidence activities using the worksheet that you see on here. I uploaded this to Canvas so that you can download and use it in your session. Before you start the activity, make sure that you briefly explain the procedure, what you're doing and why you're doing, providing the rationale, and then work with your clients to write down a list of evidence that supports your client's core beliefs that you decided to work on, and also list of evidence that's against your client's core belief. And you can do this in the session with the client, or you can assign this as a homework if your client can independently fill out this worksheet. And then while you're doing this, you can look for any cognitive distortions that are in display. So you learn some of those distorted pattern of thinking, including absolutistic thinking, personalization, catastrophization, any of the pattern of thinking that negatively affects your client's thinking, particularly related to the specific core beliefs. You can point that out. And then using this worksheet, you can think about some of the intervention strategies and co-design that with your client. So perhaps you can do a behavioral experiment that you learned last week, or cognitive or behavioral rehearsal where your clients think about situations that your clients tend to avoid, and then using cognitive coping strategies to manage the situation. And while you're doing this, you can be creative to stimulate different ways of viewing triggering situation for your client. So in addition to Socratic questioning, examining the evidence, generating alternatives, also listing advantages and disadvantages, there's also skill that's called cognitive continuum. So cognitive continuum really targets extreme pattern of thinking. Let's say that there is a client who believes that people cannot be counted on, and there might be some truth to this kind of belief, but keep believing that you cannot really trust no one is not really helpful, because no one can live alone. We all need to depend on other people to a certain degree. So if you want to address that kind of extreme thinking, you can engage your clients in doing an activity, trying to answer this question, how much can I count on people? And then use a graph or a scale that looks like this, and you can have your clients put like different people your clients have met in the client's lives, and then place people according to the degree of trustworthiness from your client's perspective on the scale. So let's say that this client's developed this kind of thinking because of this traumatic experience of being abandoned by the client's father. And then, let's say that client actually lived with the mother after the father abandoned the families. So your clients might rate father in terms of trustworthiness as like 0%, and then rate mother as 100%, because the mother has taken good care of your client. And then you can place like other people, such as the client's neighbors. You might actually put like 30%, let's say the client's ex-girlfriend, like your clients could say like about 20% you can trust this girlfriend. And then there's like one of your client's best friend, Aaron, might be about like 75%. And then there's a therapist. Your clients comes to you, talk to you, and then share like really private things with you. So your clients might think that I can trust my therapist about like 85%. And then, maybe there's church people that your clients think that the clients can trust about like 85%. So this kind of shows the different degree of trustworthiness in terms of other people that your clients spend time with. So after doing this kind of activity, your clients actually might develop like new way of thinking. There are people that you can count on, and there are also people who are not as reliable. So if your clients had this like cognitive distortion of maybe magnification or minimization, or black and white, so if you cannot like 100% trust people, just know you cannot trust anyone. So instead of having that extreme kind of thinking, your client can develop more kind of balanced and rational way of thinking about other people's like trustworthiness. If we look at other example, let's say that your clients have this belief that I'm a complete loser, will never amount to anything. So that's kind of really extreme thinking, right? And then on a scale from 0 to 10, you can ask your clients how strongly your client believes in this thought. And then your client might say like 9 out of 10. So that's like for week 1 when you just started addressing this particular core beliefs. And some more like balanced, more rational kind of thinking is that I've had some struggles. There are some like mistakes that I've made, but I can still have a bright future. Making those mistakes and having some times of struggle doesn't really mean that I'm a complete loser. So that's more balanced thinking. So when you kind of presented that as an alternative thinking, your client might buy in just about like 1 out of 10. So if you started having this extreme thinking 9 out of 10 in week 1, after you're going through a lot of like repetition, like doing exercise, using all the techniques like asking for validity and practicing to coming up with alternative way of thinking. About like week 5, your clients might still believe in that idea that the client is a complete loser, but then like the intensity went down to like 7 from 9. And then your clients might buy into this more balanced thinking about like 3 out of 10. And then with 12, that's like toward the end of your therapy, your clients might have some kind of believing in that at first extreme thinking that your clients initially had, but it really went down to like 2 out of 10. And then, more strongly believe in this more rational type of thinking that I've had struggles, but I still can have a bright future. So changing thoughts, changing core beliefs, it's a gradual process. And because of that, when you use this technique of reducing extreme kind of thinking, it's important that you point out those like small progress that your clients make. Another skill that you can use to modify beliefs is to use other people as a reference point. Again, this is similar to the skills that you learn in modifying automatic thoughts. When your client is so immersed into the client's own thinking pattern, it's sometimes difficult to realize that there are other people who may interpret things in a completely different way. So you can ask about like significant others, people who your clients trust. What about Johnny? Do you think Johnny actually might see things in the same way that you see? Or what about your mother? Do you think she might have a different way of thinking about you? Do you think your father might actually think differently about you? So that's another way that you can modify core beliefs. Acting as if it's like, let's say that your client has a very negative thoughts about themselves. One of the core beliefs is that your clients think that a client is worthless. And you can ask, something happens, like some miracle happens, and tomorrow morning you wake up and you somehow turn into this like completely different person who thinks that you're completely capable and very trustworthy and was completely lovable. Then how would that change the way you think about situation, about yourself? And how would that change the way you interact with other people? And if you actually interacted differently with other people and saw yourself differently, how do you think that will change the way you live your life? So that's a skill that's called acting as if. And you could actually do a role play, or you can actually think about a movie, and then maybe if there's a main character who has a completely different personality, has a different beliefs about themselves, maybe you can play a role of this main character and then see how that feels. Cognitive behavioral rehearsal. So we talked about this. Your clients might have some feared situation and has a tendency to avoid this feared situation. So you practice, maybe through imagery or during role play, your clients is exposed that feared situation, and then you can give chance for your clients to practice positive cognitive coping strategies that they learned in session. Behavior experiment, you learned this last week. It's the same strategy that's used to modify automatic thoughts. So all these skills you can use to change unhelpful and negative core beliefs into more helpful and adaptive core beliefs. To summarize what we covered today, we started out talking about what core beliefs are and how core beliefs contribute to your client's clinical symptom through filtering certain kind of information, following the rules that your clients created because of this core beliefs, this mental structure. And why we would want to engage clients in the process of cognitive restructuring so that your clients can just stop automatically processing certain kind of information that contributes to their clinical symptom. So we discussed some of the skills that you can use to identify core beliefs, and also skills that you can use to identify intermediate beliefs as well as compensatory behaviors. And once you identify those beliefs, you want to decide whether you want to address that core beliefs and when to address those core beliefs. And after that, you will use a list of skills that we discussed today to modify those core beliefs. So that was the summary. When you come back for a Zoom class next week, we'll talk about some of these skills and watch a therapist using those skills, and you'll have a chance to practice it with your partner. So that was it for this week, and then have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.